Hello everyone, this is Bhutani with Remax Excellence.
Hi everyone, this is Sid. I am a mortgage specialist with Mortgage Alliance.
We've got Shaunak Mehta. He's a principal lawyer at Juriscorp Law Office. He has years of experience in legal profession and he specializes in residential real estate. So we will be talking to him in detail more about the closing cost, what is the role of a lawyer in a real estate transaction. So welcome Shaunak.
Thank you. Welcome. So I think that should be our first question. What is the role of a real estate lawyer in a real estate transaction?
So the most important role of a real estate lawyer on a transaction is to make sure that the legal requirements of the contract, so between the buyer and the seller, and the requirements between the borrower, who's the buyer, and their lender, their bank, they are fulfilled, they are completed properly, and the title is transferred in the name of the buyers.
I see. Okay.
Sounds good. So we have the most common question, Shaunak. I know you get this all the time as well, and I've had my own clients when they talk to me when we're close to removing conditions on a residential transaction, they would come to me and say, well, what happens with the closing costs, Tushar? Can you give us some information as to what all is involved? So if you don't mind shedding some light on exactly what all we should be looking at in terms of closing costs, because there's legal fees, there's land title transfer, and a lot of other costs that are typically a buyer is not aware of.
Absolutely.
So if you could please let us know.
So once the conditions on an offer to purchase have been removed by the realtor, and the financing and the inspection conditions have been completed, that is when the lawyer comes into play. The most common question, as you rightly said, is how much are the legal fees and disbursements going to be, right? So as far as the total legal costs are concerned, there is a base fee that we charge. On top of that, there are GST and there are certain out-of-pocket expenses that we incur. There are also a couple key costs that the buyer has to keep in mind. Most important being the land transfer fee. So in Alberta, we have a land transfer fee or a land registration fee that every buyer has to pay from their pocket. There are certain expenses that we have for searches, so including title searches, tax searches, and also any registration on the title of the property that we think are important for us to pull and review those carefully in order to ensure that the buyer's interest is legally protected.
So typically, Shaunak, on an average, if you were to buy like a residential home, on an average, say about 350, 400, 450 maybe, what is an amount that buyers should be setting aside for the closing cost? I know a lot of time brokers maybe will kind of shed more light on it too. Brokers will do their part in terms of explaining that to their clients as to what all is involved in terms of what kind of a percentage of the value of the property they should be keeping aside for the legal cost. But just in general, if you can just kind of let us know what the approx amount is.
So for an average purchase price of about $350,000 to about $450,000 for a property in Edmonton, the buyers should budget for approximately about $1,500. That would include the lawyer's base fee plus all the expenses that come along with that. Sure.
Yeah, when we when we are talking to banks really like to see at least 1% of the property fee of the property value available with the clients. That would cover most of this closing cost that Shaunak just mentioned. It would also cover your moving cost, appraisal cost, home inspection costs, and all of that stuff. Yes, you can avoid a lot of it. Like if you were to move yourself, you don't have to pay any moving fees. If you do not need a home inspector to inspect and you can inspect it good enough, by yourself, then of course you do not pay that. But in general, bank likes to see about 1% sitting in the client's account after the down payment. But I can always, get that as an exception, or sometimes most of the banks, they don't even ask for proof of the extra 1%. But in general, the cost comes to about 1%, and that is what, if it is available in the bank accounts, the banks like it when they're giving you a mortgage commitment or something, right? They don't want you to have in your account $15,000 and you're supposed to pay the full $15,000. What next? How are you guys going to go from there on, right? So ideally, if you have about 1% extra, the banks feel more comfortable about it. So again, with closing costs, I really appreciate how you've broken it down for us. I still have a question. Apart from this closing cost, a lot of times my clients would call me back saying, oh, the lawyer's asking for so many extra funds because we have to pay property taxes now. What is this, for the remaining year? So how does that work? How does property taxes work? Can you give us some?
Absolutely. So certainly in addition to the legal fees and disbursements, there are certain other costs that each buyer should budget for as well. The biggest one being property taxes, as you mentioned.
Right.
So property taxes, as you are aware, are calculated from January 1st till December 31st. However, they are due in the middle of the year. So they are due on June 30th, and we have to ensure that the property taxes between the seller and the buyer are adjusted properly. Especially during this time of the year when the property taxes have been assessed for the current year and they're now due and payable to the City of Edmonton for the entire year.
Right.
We want to ensure that if the taxes have not been paid in full by the seller,
Right.
they are adjusted properly.
Sure.
And in addition to that, we have to collect the remainder of the property taxes or the remainder year's property taxes from the buyers and remit it to the City of Edmonton or the tax department on behalf of the clients.
So will this could add to the closing cost? So will they've got an average 1,500 on the closing side, plus they've got the property taxes, because a lot of times builder might not have paid that in advance.
Right.
So the lawyer would need to collect that from the buyers. So again, the closing cost would vary, right? It can go up.
So just to
as well.
make it clear for our clients with an example here, let's say the property taxes for a property is $3,000 and somebody is buying the property on 30th of June, or let's say for that matter 1st of July, $1,500 for the first 6 months is payable by the seller, and $1,500 for the remaining 6 months is payable by the buyer. However, they have to pay it upfront because the payment date of 30th June has passed. Is that what it is?
That is the right way to put it.
Okay.
Because if the property being purchased has a mortgage on title, and most properties are being purchased with a mortgage on title, most banks, most lenders have their conditions that there should not be any outstanding property taxes for the current year. So in order to make sure that in between the process of the title being transferred in the name of our clients, the city does not send them or send a notice to the property address that the property taxes are now due, and because if they are not paid by June 30th or by a particular date, now there are penalties that are being levied on in addition to the regular tax amount for the current year. So it is important to remit those property taxes in a timely manner. Either the clients do it or we do it. It makes sense that the lawyer does it at the time of closing, is because title transfers can take sometimes up to 2 weeks. So if the title is not transferred in the name of the buyers, when the buyer approaches the City of Edmonton, there is a possibility that the city is going to tell them that we don't know you. Your name does not reflect on our records, and as such, at this point, we cannot allow you to get on a month-to-month plan or allow you to pay the property taxes in full.
Yeah, because they see right away. I mean, a lot of my clients would call me and say, well, we've already given the down payment. We understand the closing cost you said was about $1,500, but your lawyer called me up and said that, I owe them $3,000. Well, what is that? Right? So at that point of time, this is where it all comes into place, right? So you need to be aware that there are property taxes, there are some other fees as well, not just the legal costs that you have to pay to the lawyer. So that's really good information.
Perfect.
Let's move on, Sid and Shaunak. So we also wanted to talk about RPR versus title insurance. So as we're all aware, of course, all the industry professionals, when we kind of do this day in and out, when we help our buyers buy a property either through a home builder or even with some resale options, a lot of times we get something back from the seller's agent or from the builder saying that we will be offering title insurance in lieu of RPR. Now, of course, I'll let you explain what the difference is exactly between RPR and title insurance and what they actually stand for.
We have two types of transactions. One is a resale purchase transaction, and one is a new build purchase transaction. With the new build purchase transaction, as you rightly mentioned, most builders do not provide a current real property report and a compliance certificate.
That's right.
The reason for that in most cases is because the property is newly built. There are certain portions of the property that are yet to be completed. So at the time of closing, the builder may not be able to complete the driveway, or the fencing is certainly not complete, because that in most cases is the buyer's or the homeowner's responsibility to complete.
Exactly.
Now there could be another additions like a deck. So these kind of things need to appear on a real property report. And depending on what time of the year the purchase and the sale transaction closes, it could be very well in the middle of winter. In that case,
Right.
There is absolutely no way.
Yeah.
So due to practical reasons and due to practical difficulties, that is the stand that most builders have taken in their standard purchase contracts, that they will not be providing a real property report and compliance to the buyers.
Right. So RPR, as we all know, like it's called Real Property Report, and it's basically a one-page document which talks about the exterior improvements in your property. Now, of course, as Shaunak rightly mentioned, with brand new home, there is no deck. Most of the times, there is no fencing. There is no exterior improvement. So there is no need for an RPR, and most of the builders could not even provide one at that point. But when it comes to the resale side, RPR is a document we should be knowing about. I have come across a lot of sellers. When I go and do my own listing presentation, they're not even aware what the RPR is. So even if you're trying to sell the home yourself or through somebody else, you've got to know what the RPR is and talk to your professional and kind of just get some answers on that.
Absolutely. So Tushar, as you mentioned, on a lot of resale transactions, we have also seen that the buyers have accepted title insurance in lieu of a current real property report and compliance. You cannot really compare real property report with title insurance. Those are both absolutely two separate documents. A title insurance policy is a twofold policy. One is a lender policy that protects the lender from any kind of title fraud, mortgage fraud, and so on. And the second policy is a homeowner policy. The homeowner policy protects the homeowner at the time of purchase of the property, again, from any kind of title fraud or mortgage fraud, any kind of survey defects, any defects that were not disclosed or not known either by the realtor or the lawyer or the home buyer at the time of closing of the transaction. So title insurance covers a whole bunch of claims, a whole bunch of aspects when it comes to any work orders, if there are any encroachments, if there are any caveats that were not registered at the time of the closing. So it is very important to have title insurance coverage on the property. It is made mandatory by a lot of lenders as well.
Right.
As a lot of monoline lenders, you would see they require at least a lender's policy.
That's right.
At that point, we do recommend our clients to obtain a homeowner policy, which comes at a very reasonable fee.
Right.
And that way, till the life of the ownership, till the time the person owns the property, there is coverage.
So monoline lenders are financial institutions regulated by Bank of Canada who are allowed to deal in mortgages only. That means they can only offer one product to the clients. And a lot of times we people think that monoline lenders are small just because we've never heard of their names before. But believe it or not, they're huge and they are regulated by Bank of Canada by just like any other bank out there.
Great that you mentioned that, because I get a lot of that all the time. A lot of what happens is if somebody's having some tough time with their own banks, they would come back and say, well, okay, what about brokers? And they would assume that if they're going through a broker, they'll have to pay a higher interest rate. And I've explained to them time and again that's not the case, right? So that's really great. And one last thing, Shaunak, I would like to add here, in fact ask you as a question, is that nowadays we see a lot more pre-sale homes. All right, so buyers would get involved really early in the process when their home is getting built. We still have a lot of resale transactions happening out in the market wherein possession would be 20 days out, 25 days out, and we go through that same stuff that we've just discussed. But what really happens when a home is getting built from scratch? At a builder's show home, and I'm sitting down with my own clients, and they've got this big lengthy contract. So what I really want to understand at this point is, what should we be looking at in that big contract in terms of key terms, just to make sure that our client is always being protected from the word start all the way till possession?
Right. I think one of the most important things are the timelines. Right?
That's right.
What are the timelines that the builder has promised in the contract? Is the builder going to be able to complete this property, this house, fully, say in 6 months or in 8 months? We understand that construction is affected by a lot of factors. Right? There are a lot of, like current situation like COVID, where the builder is not able to send in multiple trades at the same time. Right. And there could be season issues as well. So if there are multiple reasons, there are multiple issues that may delay and that may affect the completion of the property. So looking for those clauses in the contract, that what are the timelines of completion of this particular property. The second thing, what are the inclusions and what are the exclusions? What all is the builder going to provide while completing this property. Whose responsibility is it going to be to do your rough grading, your landscaping, your final grading, your fence? There are certain builders who will provide A to Z. They will complete everything for you. And there are a lot of builders, most builders who will be doing certain amount of work. So it is important that, and each builder has their own set of terms and conditions in the contract, their own set of promises that they will make. It is important that all of that is discussed and it is put in writing and it is understood and agreed by both parties.
Sean, what about what happens? I've had this a lot. I've worked with a lot of investors, sellers, and investor buyers, wherein they bought a property and they've moved out of town now, or they're not even from our province. They're from BC, they're from Ontario, or someplace else. And if they're having to sell a place, they've asked me a lot of times, do I need to be in the city, in the province, when I have to go and sign lawyer documents? So how does it really work in terms of closing? I know we can go ahead and list the property, they can sign the documents through electronically and send that stuff over to us, we can go about doing our own stuff. But what really happens when it's time to close the deal? And a possession is like maybe a week out or 2 weeks out.
Okay.
So can they sign paperwork from a remote location, mail that over to the lawyers? How does that really work? I know it's a really complicated process. I thought we might as well cover that too.
Sure, and like you mentioned, I mean, unlike the Real Estate Association, where you could use a platform like DocuSign to get the documents signed electronically, unfortunately the Land Titles Office will not accept documents that have been signed digitally. So we still require those vetting signatures on the transfer of land, which is the most important document that the seller would sign.
Okay.
There are requirements of how the document is executed. So there has to be a witness, the document has to be signed in front of a notary public or a commissioner of oath. So currently, due to COVID, the government of Alberta has provided certain temporary relief for getting these type of documents executed. So now we don't require a person to come down to our office or be physically present in order to sign any transfer documents. Okay. So to answer your question, if a client is sitting in another city or a province, during this time, we are able to sign the documents and execute those documents electronically. There are guidelines that we are required to follow through our regulatory body to ensure that the identification has been verified. The person who's signing the documents is legitimately the current owner and the registered owner of the property.
I think government has taken the right procedure to, at least during the COVID-19 period, they're allowing us to do this remotely. So I think it's a big plus, because safety is first, guys. We all have to make sure that everybody is safe around us. So before we wrap up today's video, would you like to add something for our viewers, Shanak?
Oh, absolutely, yes. Thank you for asking that question. I think the most important thing that I would like to add for our viewers is, please ask the right questions, right? There is a reason why there are industry professionals sitting in front of you. Be it your realtor, be it your mortgage broker, be it your builder, or be it your lawyer. It is important to ask the right questions, and it is important to know what you're getting into. Home buying process is very overwhelming and can be quite overwhelming for a lot of people. And that is why I cannot stress enough on the importance of having the right people on your team and asking those right questions to represent you and to ensure that your legal and financial interests are protected properly.
Right.
Perfect. Thanks again, Sean, for coming over and doing this for us.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you, guys. Until next time, we'll see you again. Have a great day.
Thank you, guys. Have a good day.